Welcome to the world of Priesthood Dispatches, where we tell your stories from the front lines of high-demand religion.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Priesthood Dispatches channel. It is the 8th of April 2022. General Conference is over, thank goodness. Everyone take a deep breath. And this evening we have a guest coming all the way from deepest, darkest Wales to be with us. But before we get to our wonderful guest, thank you for coming back to the channel. If you're new here, please like and subscribe. If you are returning, how are you doing? Nice to see you again. You can support the channel by leaving tips using the link in the description below. And for all other things PD, you can go to mormonpd.org and find the blog there and other videos, the podcast, and all those great things. So this evening, we have a guest who I will bring in now. Joe, how are you doing? Oh, classic COVID. Hi. You were on mute. You okay?
Or classic kids, one or the other.
Yeah. No, awesome. So thanks for joining us this evening. I know that me and Joe have been trying to get this together for a couple of months now, and conference and different things. Technical issues on my end have come and kept us apart, but finally we've got going. So Joe is joining us from Wales, and for everyone else in the world, that is God's own country. Wales is a very nice place. But I'll just leave it at that because she's Welsh and I don't want to offend anyone. But Joe, now I first met Joe as ExMoJo on TikTok and have been following Joe for a few months now as she shares her stories about her life as a mother within Mormonism and outside of Mormonism, and as they reminded us at General Conference, a daughter of God, which is fantastic. So tonight we're going to hear all about, I guess, Joe's journey inside and then outside of Mormonism, why TikTok became a thing for you, and then we're going to learn a couple more enlightening things that I've come across over the last few days with regards to other sects that take responsibility for the Book of Mormon. I know that sounds a bit weird, but the Illuminati, yeah, we'll get there when we get there. It's a bit weird. If I'm honest. But before we go there, Joe, you weren't born into the church. You came into the church as a young child because your parents joined the church when you were a toddler, 3 years of age. So this is no point kind of saying, how did that feel to you? But did you feel any different from maybe some of the other kids that were born in the covenant?
I don't think I did, no. I mean, I was aware that I wasn't born into the covenant, but no, not really.
No?
A lot of people as converts do feel less than, but not specifically.
No. And did your parents, I guess, did they remain in the church beyond yourself and still?
Yes, they're still active in the church.
Okay, so that's nice. And mine are as well, so it can always be a little bit of a balancing act sometimes. So before we get to TikTok though, have they found your TikTok yet?
They're aware I make TikToks.
Okay.
They've never seen them that I'm aware of. I don't think they would.
Okay. No. Well, I was on a call with my dad the other day, and he said to me, "Oh, look," I was on FaceTime like this. He's like, "Oh, look at your background." I was like, "Yeah, it's nice, isn't it?" You know. He's like, "Is it 3D or is it?" And they're coming over in a couple of weeks, and I know they'll be like, "Oh, can I see your background?" We're like, "Yeah, welcome to my anti-Mormon den."
Yeah, they were aware that I was making this tonight, and my dad was like, "What are you doing? What, ExMoJo?"
It's not anti-Mormon. We are all about General Conference and General Conference. It was fantastic, but deep breath. So you grew up in the church in Wales, southern Wales, heads of the valleys, or foot of the valleys as you are now. And whilst you were there, are we talking the 90s, noughties, and beyond? I'm assuming we're the same generation, probably moved in similar circles and never bumped into one another until now. Isn't it funny how that the world just kind of like throws you a bone? You meet all these wonderful Mormons in your youth that you'll never talk to again, and then later in life, Satan gets involved and you make loads of friends. Me being facetious, sorry guys. So you grew up in the church through the same primary that I did, not the same young women's, but something that I've noticed on your TikTok. So I've been watching a lot of your TikTok for the last couple of days to try and get a fix on some things. And one thing that stood out to me was a TikTok you made about purity culture. And I've seen a few other comments around General Conference and around kind of posts about young women's on New Beginnings being taken to try on wedding dresses and different things. Did you ever have anything like that?
Yeah, we definitely had a trying on wedding dresses activity. I only remember one of them, and I would have been quite young in youth, I think, at that point. But yeah, I mean, we had loads of write a letter to your future self about your future husband.
Oh my gosh.
I don't speak Welsh, no, unfortunately.
Oh, sorry, Robert. When we had, you know what? Don't worry. He did the same thing to Bethan. It's a greeting in Welsh. Robert, you've beat us again.
Sorry.
So you wrote a letter to your future husband?
Yeah, or a letter to my future self about what I wanted in a future husband, that sort of thing, numerous times. Yeah.
So did you ever sit and tell your husband what it was that you wrote?
I don't think so.
No?
He says no.
That'd be an interesting conversation.
I think he probably ticked the boxes.
Yeah. Fantastic. So bringing us to now, we will rewind and we'll go through your faith kind of journey. But just so we know where you are now, you've left the church, you have 4 children, and a wonderful husband living in southern Wales and loving life. Fantastic. So let's get down to the nitty gritty. General Conference. What is General Conference to you these days?
Not much.
No? Good.
Obviously, there seems to be more ex-Mormons watching it these days than active membership, or at least from my Facebook feed. There definitely seems to be very few Mormons as enthusiastic as they once were.
No.
You can obviously pick up snippets, you know, Oakes was his classic homophobic self, so that was fun.
Yeah, I guess the reason I wanted to ask was that I think me and Sister PD were in the same place before all of this happened, and we'd got to a place where we were like, right, it's General Conference weekend, let's go away, let's just ignore the world for the weekend, ignore Facebook for the weekend. And then Priest of Dispatches arrived and ruined all of that. I think I'm kind of in the same place as you, if it wasn't for all of everything else, of kind of like, yeah, it doesn't, what they say doesn't matter anymore. It's kind of like the Jehovah's Witnesses have a similar conference, and I don't know when it is, and I don't know what they say, and it doesn't bother me. So I'm kind of like, I wish I was there.
Yeah, I mean, I think it bothers me in the sense that there are people still in the church that we love, like my parents, my husband's mum, and his full family are all in the church. So you hear things and you think, well, that's what they're thinking of us this time. This is what they think, you know. So that's always a bit bit of a stab, but other than that, I don't really care.
No, it's. I think that's where you get to when you've gone through every stage of grief that they say, because coming out of high demand religion and losing that whole community and everything is a grief, a grievance. What am I trying to say? A loss in our lives. So you get to that point where you kind of just like, yeah, it's water off a duck's back almost.
Yeah.
So no, awesome. Well, so if we rewind to Joe, age 18, just finishing Young Women's, where are you? What are your, I guess, aspirations in life?
Just turning 18. We had been moved to, my dad was moved, or our family was kind of, the ward boundaries were rewritten or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And he had become the branch president of a small branch, and that was a really difficult transition from about 14 to 18. That it's a difficult age to move when you've lost all your friends and your group.
Yeah.
And at age 18, I was called as primary president. I think I'd served like as a councillor for a few months to the primary president, and then she got called to stake, and I was called as the primary president. So,
oh my gosh, at 18.
18, yeah. And at the same time, I was a student nurse. So, I think in a way I felt quite mature for my age, because I didn't do the whole YSA thing because I couldn't. I was the primary president. I had a councillor. I had to be in my branch, and I was working as well, because you work as a student nurse. So yeah, it was a difficult time. I didn't really start the YSA thing till much later in my life. So
okay. Well, I guess I don't know. The Mormon patriarch in me says, well, primary president so young would have given you a fantastic grounding in motherhood and different things, whereas the real me kind of says, well, that sucks because it stopped you being able to, go out with your peers and do what I guess normal Mormon YSA in the UK would do, and that would be to travel around the country and go to different conventions and dances, and you missed out on all that.
Yeah, and of course my dad was the branch president, so that was a little bit of friction. There wasn't really any people to call, so so I was called, and the previous primary president recommended me, but it was difficult because I felt like I was an adult but not quite an adult, and I wasn't doing the things that other people were my age. And I didn't go away to university like everyone else did, so it was a bit strange feeling.
Well, I kind of feel I was called as bishop at 23, and the bottom of the barrel must have been scraped so thin to have exposed me. Unreal. But yeah, it's kind of like you don't get the normal church experience from a young age.
Yeah.
And then primary's just, I don't know. For me, primary's a nightmare. Like, I think of being in a room with all them children. Nursery leaders are the salt of the earth. Anyone who goes to church on a Sunday, like, let's just say you're up here for going to church on a Sunday as it is for 3 hours, to go to church on a Sunday knowing that you are just going to be babysitting other people's children for an extra 2 hours, you're up here, like it takes a special breed. Okay.
I think Mum is like those type of people that she loved primary. She was always primary president or stake primary president, and I think I was primary president 3 times. I think people just was like, oh yeah, she's Anne's daughter, she'll be perfect.
Yeah. You get typecast. But something that, so for Nemo's show, Sister PD went on Nemo's show, and Nemo asked for her kind of church CV, and basically I could have just said it's the church CV of every sister you will ever meet, because it's all the same: primary, young women's, Relief Society, and possibly a ward missionary. Just do one thing from all of them, and you'll be fine, you know, and that's it. And I think something that we've gone on about a lot on the podcast in the past, with regards to sisters and the priesthood and different things, there's a lot to be had from the other half of the church membership, i.e. the sisters that were kind of pigeonholed and not listened to, whereas I think the church should be in a very different place right now if they'd have changed that a long time ago. But that's far too sensible for us to talk about on a Friday night.
No, well, I think it's a really good point. I mean, my last proper calling before I left the church was adult Sunday school teacher. And I loved that because I think it's one of the very few callings that women can actually teach to men. Like, I can't think of any other calling where a woman would teach a man in that position. And I loved that. I loved being able to research and teach that and have the feedback and questions. It was really good, you know. And seminary, I've taught seminary as well. And again, you're not teaching men, you're teaching boys, but still.
How many years did you teach seminary?
3, I think. But Kevin had taught it for how many years? I don't know. For about 3 as well. So I kind of covered his as well. So I'd had more than a full year.
Okay.
He worked shift. I would cover his lessons. So.
Wow. And so, in teaching seminary and teaching Sunday school, did that have any impact on, I guess, your journey out of Mormonism?
Not really. Seminary, definitely not. Seminary was really reinforced my testimony, if anything else. I absolutely loved it. With adult Sunday school, there were more times when I'd looked into things, like I'd looked at race in the priesthood, and that was something that I didn't feel comfortable with, and I felt like, why can't they just apologize and say yes, it was racial, rather than try and sugarcoat everything. So I had those sort of reservations. I wouldn't necessarily have thought of it as a shelf item back then, but I do wonder what would have happened if I continued teaching that anyway. So
I know Sister PD got to a point where she just had to say, I can't. She tried to carry on teaching and being like, well, I just need to keep doing my calling and teaching it. But then the manual kept saying things to her that I don't think she agreed with. And eventually just had to say, I can't do that anymore. But she'll be in the other room now telling me off talking about her behind her back. So sorry, darling. So you've found your eternal companion, the wonderful Kevin, hi Kevin, and he is your stripling warrior. You've married in the temple.
Yeah. Wow.
No.
Yeah, we are married in the temple.
Awesome. I feel like there's a story there. It's okay.
Not necessarily on the day that everyone thinks we did.
You know what? I don't think any of us should have been married in the temple on the day that people think we did.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are many a couple that went through maybe a little bit early. So, and you have 4 wonderful children. Were they all born, I guess, inside of Mormonism?
Yeah, so they're all under the covenant, yeah.
Okay, and so the question would be, and the reason I ask these questions is because they're questions that me and Sister PD came across kind of moving out of Mormonism with children. Did you ever worry about how you were going to teach your children, I guess, to grow up in the world that you had no experience of? Kind of like alcohol, drugs, not that they will, hopefully, you know what I mean? But as Mormons, we're very sheltered. Very sheltered.
Yeah, it's definitely something we have lots of conversations about. And it was really challenging when we were sort of transitioning out of the church, So like that, or what we're going to do, you know, because you feel like the church gives you your morals. You don't realize that, you know, we're generally quite moral beings.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something we have conversations on all the time, and it's something I'm not really sure. Like I was saying to a friend today about someone had made a comment about pupils having short skirts, and I was like, well, I feel like you shouldn't be telling people what they should wear. And they were all never Mormon, so their opinions were, well, it's just disgusting how short these skirts were. It's grotesque, and all these sort of comments. And I was like, oh, okay, that's not what I anticipated, because I went from a culture that taught us what to wear and that the way we presented our bodies affected other people. And now I feel like, well, you should be able to wear what you want to wear, and people need to be responsible for their own actions. And I don't actually know what would be considered a normal reaction to that, because clearly it's not where I thought it was. So there's lots of things that you still discover, and you're like, oh, okay.
I feel sometimes like I want to walk around with like a sign around my neck that says that I'm only like worldly, like 4 years old or something.
Yeah.
Like I'm still learning, guys.
Yeah.
It's like going to Starbucks and they say, what do you want to drink? And I'm like, anything past hot chocolate. I've got no idea.
Yeah.
You know, do you want cream on that? Yes, please. That's the only question I can answer.
Yeah.
Cream and a shot of caramel syrup.
I've got absolutely amazing Nevermore friends, and they are fantastic with me and really support me. But it is hilarious. They find it hilarious that I'm like, yeah, I don't like that. Nope, coffee tastes disgusting.
I love how people who are still in the church talk about ex-Mormons, and they're like, oh, you drink coffee just because it's coffee. You're like, no, I've tried coffee and it is disgusting. But I think that it's a mental thing rather than a taste thing. I think I was brought up knowing it was the devil's tea, and that just the taste of it, even like beer and different things, just the taste of it kind of destroys me. So it might taste nice, but I don't know without my Mormon kind of hat on.
No, I've never quite transitioned out of word of wisdom. I mean, I'll try things, but I don't. I want to, but
some people transition hard though, don't they?
Yeah.
Like, all power to them.
Yeah, definitely.
I asked my parents if they'd got any interesting stories about their time at church, and my mum was at a YSA convention. They do them at like universities now and things, and it was the night of the dance, and she saw a young lady out in the car park with a particularly short skirt on. So she went out and started shouting at her about the length of her skirt and telling her to pull her skirt down to her knees and different things, you know, to make it longer. And then a young man appeared next to her. And then this young lady and this young man started walking off, and they left the path and went into some bushes. And she followed them and started shouting at them, where do you two think you're going? And then it transpired that they weren't from the convention. They were just two random university students who happened to be walking through the wrong car park at the wrong time that she chased down into some woods. So yeah, everyone gets a bit. So now we'll get to, I guess, the hardest time, and that was leaving the church. What was it? I guess, how did it start? Can we say you just wanted to sin? Because I know a lot of people like to go with that one.
Definitely not for me. I feel like when I talk about it, I had the sort of a physical leaving of the church and then a more spiritual leaving of the church that came later. I physically left the church because we had run after run in with our bishop at the time. Funny enough, it started around the calling. I think he was a new bishop. He wanted to be cool. He made lots of promises to lots of people. And then when I was like, hang on now, you said this to me and you're saying that to them. He really didn't like that. Like, he really, really overreacted by it. And then he started telling people I was a liar. And I was not taking that well. Oh. And I don't think as a woman, you're supposed to just be submissive, and he didn't anticipate me not being. And yeah, it got really nasty. My husband was serving on the High Council at the time, and he was a new bishop, and yeah, I mean, he was telling people that I was a pathological liar and that we had marriage problems and to leave us alone for a while. If anyone ever challenged him in ward council, he threatened them and then took them off the ward council, released them from their call-ins. Like, it was like quite an obvious, huge thing that happened in the ward. You know, I had even put a memes on like the Facebook page and then send me a message being like, I hope you've seen that meme. It was aimed at you. And like,
oh my God.
Yeah, it was really bad. And
what is going on in South Wales?
well, and so my husband obviously was on the High Council, so he spoke to the stake president, and it took a while for him to actually come and speak to us at all. But then when he did, he constantly said the same thing. He said, I love that man, and I know he's called of God. And that was like his line to describe it. And then he would say stuff like, to assume makes an ass out of me and you, and those sort of thing. And rationalize is telling yourself rational lies. And I'm like, what are you trying to get to with these little? He's like, oh, I'm not saying anything. I'm not saying you're lying. This is just something I picked up. Like, why would you say that to someone then?
Oh my gosh.
And I guess the longer it went on, the more I recognized he was gaslighting me. And it was really quite obvious. And that became really difficult. And I actually did have, like, the bishop was telling people I had severe mental health issues. And by the end of it, I really did. And there was more than one time when I just didn't want to go on anymore. I wanted to meet God and ask him why he was allowing this to happen. I spent hours on my knees praying and fasting and reading my scriptures and feeling like, why is no one helping me? Why is this happening? Because it feels like your entire world just collapsing. And I didn't know what to do. And Kevin, we still believed in the church, and that was the hardest thing. Kevin was like, I think we need some distance. And we had asked to move our records. We weren't allowed. And to a different ward, and we just took a step back. Kevin asked to get released, and we took a step back from church. And it didn't really stop. Anytime we went back, it continued, and anytime we spoke to the stake president, we had the same sort of responses of, well, I love that man, and I know he's called of God, and he failed to see when I was like, that's really. It's almost abusive what you're saying, because I'm telling you what's happening and you're telling me you love him and he's called of God. I don't know how you think that helps the situation. But he was like, oh, I'm just telling you what I feel. I know he's called of God. Well, I know he's not. And eventually I wrote a letter to the area presidency and the first presidency of the church, thinking, like, I just need to get this out, because I need to just put it behind me, because he's obviously not going to change. It's clearly down to me. This is like a trial that I've been given. And so I wrote to them, like, I'm putting the burden on your feet. I want to go back to church, but I just want someone to hear my story. And so I'd kind of given that out there. And then I found that they never speak to you. They just reroute it to the stake president, and the stake president then comes back to deal with you. Stake president was not happy that I'd done this, as you can imagine, and informed me that he had to spend several hours on the line to the abuse hotline, or whatever it is they call it. You know, the 24-hour support thing.
Okay, for the church.
Yeah, which turns out to be just lawyers
in
any risk that the church may have in this.
Yeah.
The stake president left it with, you're welcome to take legal action, because we don't feel like the church has any. And that was like, at that point, it was like, I do not believe in this church, because I was not looking for a fight. I was not complaining. I was putting the burden on someone else so that I could move on. And to have that response just felt like there's no God in this church. There can't be. So at that point, I stepped out of the church, and I was like, I'm not going back.
Wow.
So that I was out, I guess, then. But it wasn't until the pandemic when we'd had a new stake president and a new bishop happening in the state, Kevin was like, I think I will thinking about whether or not we should go back. And at that point, we started looking into the stuff in the church. And we started with like letter to my wife, and then moved on to the CS letter. And we were determined to actually find the truth. We were like going through the references in the CS letter and everything, going, oh, but they're exaggerating this point or whatever. And then we were going and reading like the apologetic stuff and the church website. And then I was like, actually, they're the ones that are kind of paraphrasing things and taking things out of context rather than the anti-Mormons. Yeah. And the more we kind of looked in it, it was like, no, this isn't good. And like I was already out, but even though I was out, it was like a ton of bricks, having like, oh, you know, I didn't think there was a God in this, but I didn't know all the things that I should have known about this church that I gave my entire life to and would have died for.
Yeah, it seems like you went through such a traumatic kind of, you were almost pushed out. Yeah. And then I think a lot of us in wanting, we want the church to be true, especially because we've invested so much in the church.
Yeah.
Time, not just time and effort, but ourselves, you know, our whole selves, what we tell our children about things. So to then kind of, I know I had to say it to one of my kids once, well, we don't believe that anymore. And it just, it's a tough one to take.
I think you put, as you say, you invest so much, and it's not just the financial, and it's not just the call-ins, but there were many a time when I had children very, very close together because I thought that's what God wanted for our family. Mm-hmm. And my children all have additional needs of different levels, and it was really challenging. And especially when I didn't realize that they had any additional needs, and I just thought I was this awful parent that wasn't managing my children at all. And Kevin had spent the entire time we were on Swansea on the bishopric, and I was like, I really, when they would move him around, I would say, can you release him now? I really need him. I need him because I am struggling. And they would constantly just say, but you need to give this. All women struggle when their husbands are serving in leadership call-ins, and you'll be blessed for it. And I was like, you know, there is a point where there is a breaking point for people, but of course you were just told, but the Lord never gives you more than you can handle. And there were many times when I think I was pushed further than I could handle. And
yeah. Well, I think one thing that you did miss at the General Conference this time round was, well, you didn't miss it. You didn't miss it, but they know all about not holding God, like not judging God, and that blessings come in their own time, and that it's not our way, it's God's way in different things. And I think it's kind of like what you just said. You know, leaders will always say, oh, well, we can't see the full picture, or we don't know what the dinosaurs did and how they fit in, but it doesn't matter, or we don't know this or that. And it seems that the further we get down the road towards the second coming, the less and less the church seems to know through these prophets and apostles. So this week on social media, you posted in the ex-Mormon group. I think I commented on it, and a few other people. It might have been just yesterday.
Oh.
So what do you say to people when they say, I'm sorry to hear that you've left the church?
Yeah. I get it from missionaries all the time. Like suddenly we have had like streams of missionaries, and sometimes I usually just say, well, I'm not. But sometimes I think, I wish I had something wittier to say. So that was kind of my point of it, that I think usually when they say something, I'm in a good mood, but the last time they came, I just was in that sort of like everything was going wrong in the house, that we were doing jobs, and so everything was a mess, and they came to the door, and I just felt not in the right frame of mind. I was like,
yeah,
you know, when the house looks a mess and you look disorganized, and then someone comes and they're like, well, you can see you've left the church because you're clearly not functioning. The fact that it wasn't functioning before I was in the church is never.
It's our countenance, isn't it? We're darker, and we've lost the light, the light of Christ and all that. But I think I just want to say to them, "Well, come into my lair," said the spider to the fly. Come on in, and I'll have a cup of tea. Dear me. Okay, so something that you did for me this week, and bear with me, I'll just pull this up on the stream, that everyone can have a go at if they want to. If you head over to mormonpd.org, that's mormonpd.org, you can find here a lovely little, I guess, kind of bingo. It's a family home evening game. It's not really, I made it. The church has nothing to do with it. But this one, how Mormon are or were you? And each of these are milestones in life that is a standard Mormon life, such as graduating all 4 years of seminary or taking out your own endowments, never drank caffeinated drinks. Each box has its own score, and then there's some categories at the top. So Joe has kindly completed this at home and given me her score. So how Mormon were you? You scored, Joe, a 56 on this, which means that you were Mormon cannon fodder. You were all in and would have died for the cause, but you owned the front line. So in going through that, were there any that stood out, I guess, that you thought you should have done and didn't? Did you ever dress a body?
No.
No, that's a big one.
Never Relief Society material. I was youth and primary, but I never kind of graduated into Relief Society. I was never sensible enough for that.
Okay, so no, but I think I got exactly the same score as you, so I think it fits well. Some people, Roy Han, if everyone or anyone gets a chance to take a look on the website at that, you can see the leaderboard at the bottom. Roy Han has 119 points. For anyone, and his wife Emma has 109 points. For anyone who doesn't know who the Hans are, they are a Mormon family from Scotland with 13 children who are now an ex-Mormon family, lovely family, but they are like, there are Mormons in Utah that aren't even as Mormon as they are. That's how fantastic the Hans were. Okay, so also on the site, we have the Mormon Mythbusters. This one's a little more interesting to share on a family home evening. So these are some of the myths that people believed, or that social media says that Mormons believe around the world. And on this, you scored a 46, which meant you were a moon quaker and the peace pipe was your jam. And me too. But you were saying, were there any of these that surprised you?
There were a couple that I hadn't heard of. I can't remember what they were now.
Okay. I think the one that took me aback, and that I think takes most people aback, is like, you can't, or you must wear garments during sex to get pregnant.
Yeah.
Right here in the middle, 4 points if you believe that.
Yeah, no, I don't believe that.
Yeah, I got that one. I don't know. Someone from Idaho must have written that one.
Yeah.
So a planet called Kolob.
Sacrament as well. That was not something I'd heard.
It was what? Sorry.
The dead people having sacrament in the chapel at night. That was.
Yes. I thought that was an awesome one when it came up, though. Like, so all of these were just ones that I put out for on social media.
Yeah.
And yeah, the dead people. So in the chapel at night, dead people gather to have their sacrament. Like, can they clean it as well? Can they take it on a rota? You know what I mean?
Kevin believed Cain was Bigfoot, but I never believed that.
Cain was Bigfoot. Well, the story from church history of Cain, yeah, that was
miracle of forgiveness as well, isn't it?
I think so, yeah. It's just how Mormonism has an explanation for everything.
Yeah.
It's like someone sat there and said, what do we need to explain? Bigfoot. Okay, it's Cain. You know, what do we need to explain? I don't know.
The salamander letter.
Yeah, these three random guys that showed up one time to change a tire, 3 Nephites.
Yeah.
You know, it's always got the answer. So awesome. But for anyone watching, if you want to head over to mormonpd.org, or anyone listening, then you can find that there, download the PDF and have a good laugh at home, and submit your scores and you'll get onto the leaderboard, I promise. And I'll put yours on later, Joe, I promise. If Kevin wants to send me his, I can put his on too.
I think his was similar. We worked out about the same, but slightly different things.
Awesome. Okay then, right. So you've left the church, and how do you then go from being, how do you end up on TikTok? How did any of us end up on TikTok? COVID happened.
Well, I think I even though I'd been out for a good few years, I never kind of defined myself as ex-Mormon or anything like that at that point. And then I kind of was like, oh, actually, I'm out. And so I discovered, social media groups and different things like that, and then found ex-Mormon TikTok and just really enjoyed it and felt like, oh, I could be part of this. I could share my experience, and it's helpful to talk sometimes because it is quite isolating.
Yeah.
We're really, really lucky that Kevin and me were fully in together and fully out together, and even when he wasn't quite as fully out, he was still by my side. So I realized how really lucky I am to be in that situation, that I didn't have, I don't know how that would have worked, because we were both so fully in that if one of us had come out and not, and the other one still being like properly in, that would have been really challenging. But yeah, even still having Kevin, it's still nice to be able to like just you have all these experiences and all these thoughts, but you don't have the ability to talk to anyone really about it. And yeah, so I guess that's how I found, and it's great community on TikTok. And
yeah, no, absolutely. I think if anyone who wants to look up Joe on TikTok, the link is in the description below. It'll take you straight to some of her stuff. If you want to see baby rabbits, I saw them this week, and ducklings. What was the deal with the ducklings?
Well, I have another TikTok as well. That's under Animal Kutch. That's my like company name, and we have a lot of animals, like a lot of animals. But I'm not sure how people generally feel about snakes and things, so I keep them on the and keep the ducklings and the bunnies on there.
I don't know. Think about it. We were all Mormons at one point. Snakes are kind of like our thing, like stick it in a stone box, with the Bible, and we're there.
I had a really great experience this week actually, because we did a school request for a whole school day, but just to bring snakes, which I was like, can we not bring something soft first to like ease people into the snakes, because people can have quite strong reactions to snakes. So, but they said, no, we just want snakes. So we took the snakes. We took 7 snakes with us. And a lot of people were very nervous, even just us carrying stuff through the corridor. And like a lot of students came in, and it was an additional learning needs school. So it was a secondary school, but a lot of children had quite profound difficulties. And sorry if you can hear my children.
It's fine.
Sorry. And and then a lot of the staff were really nervous, but they had such a great experience. And like I had to drag some of the snakes off some of the children and adults at the end. They were like, I didn't know they felt like this way, and they had such tactile experience, because they're not what people think they're going to feel like. And it was really nice to see that change, that like almost instant, because there were only like 20-minute sessions per group, and having people come in terrified and leave like, I want to buy a snake. Like, don't rush into it. Don't rush in.
I'm sure all the parents were happy about that.
Maybe not.
What did you do at school today? Oh, this python, it was massive. I want one.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Sending like pictures home to the kids' parents as the day went out, and I was having like, what snake was it that this child held, and what snake was it that child? The parents want to know. Like, okay.
So oh my gosh,
it's a good day.
Here's your child holding the most venomous snake on the planet.
We did bring a venomous snake, and we did
Wow.
let the child hold it.
Flipping heck. That's brave. This is the thing I love about these interviews. This is so like just a random place that we get to, but that's what it's all about, isn't it? So, snakes. Well, speaking of snakes and all things slithery, I learned something new today. And since becoming PD, I've had several approaches from another secret society who promised me fame, fortune, and everything that goes along with it. And that is the famous Illuminati. And to say that they're a secret society, they are very famous, but who knows which one is the right one. So I offered to pray about it, but they weren't going with that. I think it was someone trying to scam me, but you never know. But today I learned of a new Illuminati who call themselves the real Illuminati. Now, for me, anyone who starts their title with the word real automatically is wrong. It's like, we are the real church. We are the true church. Well, I'll be the judge of that. But the real Illuminati recently sent a letter to the First Presidency in the Quorum of the 12, claiming that they were the ones to write the Book of Mormon, and they were the ones to have made Joseph Smith who he was and what he was. And we'll just now watch a tiny clip of a video because I just find this so interesting. I want your reaction to this. So this is from therealilluminati.org.
The most destructive of the secret combinations of power is that of the religious authorities that control the minds and hearts of the masses. These cause division and hate without regard or respect for any other belief other than their own. Our goals are to oppose superstition, to oppose obscurantism, to oppose the negative religious influences over public life, and also the abuses of state power. It is our intent to end the machinations of the purveyors of injustice, to influence and control them without taking away anyone's free will. We need to earn the trust of the people of the world. To do so, we have written a book, a new American scripture, how and why we, the real Illuminati, created the Book of Mormon. This book is our case against one of the wealthiest religions on earth, a religion that has used the above-mentioned secret combinations of power to become what it is today. In this free-to-download book, we provide indisputable evidence that our group was solely responsible for what is known throughout the world as the Book of Mormon, a new American scripture first published in 1830 while the United States was establishing itself as one of the greatest nations on earth. It is our desire to come out of obscurity and from behind closed doors and share what we know and what we are doing with the people of Earth in an effort to save humanity from what appears to be imminent destruction.
Okay, we'll leave that there. It goes on for a little while. I'm sure that I'm going to be... Oh, find where we're going. Apologies, guys. My buttons are all over the place. Oh my gosh. I'm sure that I'm going to be tracked down by the Illuminati and, yeah, be in trouble now. For anyone who wants to watch the full video, I'll post it on the PD Facebook page, but it's therealilluminati.org. And I thought they were doing really well with We Oppose, going through all of the things we oppose, you know, controlling the masses and not having freedom of, they were talking about other religions. Anyway, I thought they were doing well until they claimed the Book of Mormon. Like, I really liked his voice. He'd got a bit of the Morgan Freeman's about him. And then they claimed the Book of Mormon, and I'm like, oh my gosh. Why would I don't know if someone just looked and thought that business has that product and is one of the richest businesses on the planet. How can I be rich? I know I'm going to have the same product and I will be as rich as them. I don't know if that's what someone's thought at this point, or if it's just someone in Utah who has gone really hard on the ex-Mormon thing. And if anyone is involved in the real Illuminati, not the ones that come to me every day on Facebook, but bring me the sign and the password. Okay. ExMoJo is the password. If you're watching and you're out there, if you're the real ones, ExMoJo, get me on Facebook and we can talk about it. But I've downloaded the book and I will return and report. But I can't, honestly can't see the benefit in claiming the Book of Mormon.
No. Probably better books to claim.
I'm like, if they'd come and said Harry Potter, I don't like that. But you know what I mean?
To have gone.
There were a lot of books I'd have gone to before I got to the Book of Mormon. Highest degree, do they claim the Book of Abraham? I'm not too sure. The book, the free PDF, is 1,000 pages long by the looks of it. So I think it'll be a while before I'm even close to being sure what they actually claim. But
even
for everyone out there,
claiming the Book of Abraham was written by Kyrie anymore, are they? So
well, yeah, I think a lot of I interviewed Matthew from the Restored Branch of Christ, their prophet, and he said that the Book of Abraham wasn't even written by the Mormons. It was someone else. So it's random. But hey, the Book of Abraham, it's almost a silver bullet. But I think one thing that I've heard tonight that you said was from your stake president, and he said about making assumptions and rationalizing things, rational lies.
Yeah.
And you're like, I don't know, not preaching to the choir, but it's almost ironic.
Yeah.
Because that's what the gospel is. And once you actually stop lying to your rational self, it kind of all falls away.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you. I'm just double checking that I've covered everything that I wanted to. But Joe, this is your stage. Is there anything that you want to say to the world, I guess, about Mormonism? Well, you already are through your TikTok, that again, everyone can go and watch using the link in the description below. But is there anything this evening that you want to say to, I guess, the people who've been watching who were touched by your story? A few people in the chat, Tom, Danelle, Harriet, who have been touched by, I guess, the trauma that you went through. Is there anything you want to say to them or to other members who might be going through that trauma right now?
Yeah, thank you for the comments in the chat. It's really nice to have other people feel, and you know, and I think when I was like talking about it, one thing that struck me was the fact that you can't get away from it either. Like in almost every other instant when something happens like that and there's an abuse of authority, you can potentially move away from it, but you have so many interconnecting links with everyone. So like my children went to the same school as this bishop's children, and which is highly unusual in this area anyway, to be in church with, you know, and that was really difficult. Like my mum was friendly with his wife and his parent, mother-in-law, and that sort of thing. Everyone's kind of connected to everyone, and it's really difficult to escape. And like other members, nobody wanted to take a side either, and that was, it's challenging, you know, when everyone's
the
way they are linked. And like I still see, like his wife's still on my Facebook, and I still see posts from him. And I grew up with the stake president's daughter. Like we were really, really good friends growing up, and then I was really good friends with another of his sons when we were in YSA. And you know, I felt, and we were really close to the family, really close to the stake president. My dad served on the bishopric with him for years. We were he had a horrendous car accident, the stake president, at one point, and we were one of the few people that went to see him in ICU and things like that. Like you feel like you have connections to all these people, because with, you know, you have, everyone's connected, and that's really difficult when things go wrong. It makes it so much harder to overcome, because you're like, well, and to walk away from, you know, those connections you make with people.
Yeah.
Almost all of us are connected. You could probably, every single one of us will find mutual friends. If we've kept our Mormon friends on our Facebook, you would find mutual friends between all of us, because it's a small world in Mormonism, isn't it? So
yeah, especially in the UK, I think it's like people play the 7 steps of Kevin Bacon game in Hollywood, I guess, between movies that they've all been on. But in the UK with Mormonism, it's like 3 steps of Mormonism, not even 7, you know, to get from one person to another. And usually it's by marriage, because we're all interbred. I'm sure if we sat down and actually thought about it, it wouldn't be that far away.
Did you use LDS Linker back in the day?
Oh no. Oh, maybe I did. I did use a chat where you kind of put your age, your sex, and your location or whatever.
Okay.
Just LDS chat or.
Okay, we had LDS Linker as well, so maybe it was like, it was crazy, because like all of us, like whoever it was that you thought, oh, that person looks nice, like you could find connections to them. You could like,
oh my gosh,
on this person, is this person like sane? Turns out I wasn't, and he wasn't.
oh my gosh, it's like they've just raised they're going about Mormons joining the CIA, and this is why we're good at it, because we've been raised to be nosy Parkers, to track down all those pesky less actives.
Yeah, definitely.
No,
and you think about those sort of experiences where you looked pitifully on people that had left the church, and sort of ways of reactivating them, and now you're like, we need to leave these people alone.
Well, I've moved across the country and not given them my new address. We're back in a ward that we were in before, and my brother-in-law was called as the bishop, and I just said to him, you know my address, but the church doesn't, so let's keep it that way. And he's been all right about it, but I'm like, if I want the church to know where I am, I'll tell them.
Yeah, I would say we've got a lovely stake president and a lovely bishop in this ward and things now, and the bishop knows where I stand. We've spoken, and the bishop spends, well, he doesn't so much since he's been called as bishop, but they used to spend, Kevin and him would spend like Thursday nights shooting zombies on Call of Duty for years. So
there you go.
So yeah, we're still friendly. So yeah, I mean, that's nice that not everyone cuts off complete contact.
Yeah,
you know, not everyone's the same. We had a terrible bishop and a terrible stake president, but now we have, you know, much nicer stake president and bishop. Yeah. So it's not branding everyone with the same brush at all. But
oh, you're so nice. Like I'm just literally like, no, get off my doorstep. You're no, go away. I'll be so rude to them just seeing them coming down the street. Be like, Sister PD, lock the doors. The Mormons are coming. Oh my god! I
don't like the word triggering, but you do see missionaries, and it is triggering, isn't it? You're just oh, and you don't. I don't want to be mean, but I equally don't want that always feel sorry for you attitude either. So
yeah, and I think it can be tough with like extended family that way, because all of my family and all of Sister PD's family are all still very TBM. So whenever it's family events and different things, you know that you're the dirty one in the corner. You know, everyone's looking at a watch thinking, how long until he needs to go out for a cigarette? I don't smoke, but I know that's what they think. They probably think like he's got a packet of fags in his back pocket, and he's just had like some heroin or something, and he's got a tattoo machine in his other pocket. And if our children get too close, he will mark them.
It was 666 or something.
Yeah. We but we've all been there. We've all been kind of that judgmental, and I think it's just the way the world is, isn't it?
Yeah, but I'm quite lucky. My parents live like a few doors away from us. We moved like to live quite near them. And although they are TBM, my mum particularly is a lot more nuanced than, and I never thought I'd see that side of my mum, but she recognizes there is big problems. So that's nice. And I think my dad does. He likes to argue. He likes to argue anyway. He's just that type of person. He's like competitive with everything. And but he definitely is like, no, he can see problems. He has issues. He used to be an atheist, and how he got into the church in the first place, I just can't figure out. But
Wow.
we have that more with my husband's family, that they're in, but it's the elephant in the room that nobody will speak about. And it's like the house is covered in church paraphernalia. When you go visit and you're like, there's a pamphlet of Joseph Smith looking at me, turn it over.
Oh my gosh. Well, we for the last few years, my parents lived at the temple, and we used to have to go spend Christmas, like, because they couldn't leave the temple. They were there on a mission as the temple president, so they lived in the house behind the temple, which had like a massive like hall and different things. So all Christmas dinner and everything was there. So you'd be staying for the weekend, like looking up at Moroni, thinking, "Oh my gosh,
Wow.
I got away from this. I'm sure. Now I'm back."
So that would be challenging.
So yeah, well, I was there with a hip flask as well, just kind of topping up. I thought to myself, has anyone ever got drunk in the temple president's house at Preston? Well, everyone, let me tell you, they have now.
So what's your tipple of choice then?
Me, I'm either rum and coke kind of guy, spiced rum. I'm not hard, like I'm not ex-Mormon enough yet to go for like the hard rum. But spiced rum and coke, lots of coke, or like a fruit cider. No product placement on the show. I'm not. I wish they'd pay me, but they don't. But yes, so that's something to never tell my parents. But and if you think about the interior, if anyone's been to a temple and to the celestial room, all of the furniture in the celestial room, once it's done within the celestial room, goes to the temple president's house. So imagine all the golden sofas, the thick carpets, which are all like carved. It is like living in the celestial room. I was just sat there with a rum and coke getting blabbered. Merry Christmas, you filthy animals. Okay, I'm going to shut up now before I get myself in more trouble. Well, Joe.
Idea for the location of the Birmingham temple then?
The Birmingham temple, what a joke that is, eh? There was a thought that it could go to Solihull because the church still owns the church office building there. But with all the changes that they made this week as well, so for anyone that's not aware, in General Conference, President Nelson announced a Birmingham, UK temple. And in the UK, the big thing is, when will Scotland and Ireland get a temple? But they didn't. Birmingham got one. Birmingham is right in the middle of the two temples that we already have, which for Utah isn't very far, because Utah, you get a temple every block. But here in the UK, the two temples we already have aren't full. So adding a third one seemed craziness. But when you look at the numbers involved, there is some method to the madness, because the Birmingham stake over the last 10 years, Chris Mace put together all the numbers. Thank you, Chris. And it showed a 40% drop in membership in Birmingham. But what had happened in those 10 years is the church officers, they'd rejigged the European areas and taken it from 3 areas to 2 and taken the church office building away. Now, what the church has done this week is they've announced the temple in Birmingham, and they've rejigged the areas in Europe again. and gone from the 2 back to 3, and there will be church offices yet again in England, and I'm assuming they'll go back to Birmingham. So I think they've seen that 40% drop and been like, oh, what can we do to fix that? I know, let's give them a temple and let's put the church office building back there. Because what comes with the church office building? A bunch of Mormons.
Yeah, but then how are they going to man it? Because, you know, I was going to the Preston Temple every month back, I don't know, 12 years ago. And, you know, we'd arrive and they'd be like, oh, we've got people. So I don't know how that's going to work.
Yeah, well, that's, see this, highest degree.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what I've heard is that in these small temples, so it's not going to be anything like Preston. These temples that they're building these days, especially where there's already other temples in the vicinity, are very small. Kind of, when I say small, think a small chapel, like that size. And they've got just one of everything. So there's no cafeteria, there's no, you know, books. Well, there might be a bookstore, but there's no distribution centers, MTCs, anything like that.
They've pulled all the cafeterias out of all temples anyway now, haven't they?
Yeah, they're closing them all because of money. They can't afford to run the cafeterias. Can't afford to subsidize cafeterias.
You drive-through temple.
Yeah, highest degree, like a drive-through temple. That's where you take out your endowments, highest degree. Oh dear. Yes, like a drive-through temple. They go up like a McDonald's. They're
it work, you know, hand out the window.
They're prefabbed, and yeah, this is pure craziness.
Don't give them ideas now. That's what the next thing will be. You all sit in the like a
hand out the window.
Hand out the window.
That's too good. That is. Just everyone in the car. Have a wave.
Add the robes on while sat in your car might be more challenging for some of the elderly populace.
I thought what they need to do. Have you been to the movies recently since COVID?
I haven't. No.
Okay, so a lot of like Showcase have gone premium, where they've taken out all the normal seating and they've put in all lazy boy recliners. I think as the church, as temple attendance gets less and less and less, they'll take out all the seating, and rather than having room for like 100 people in one room, it'll go down to like room for 20 people in a room, because they'll replace it with lazy boy recliners. And then
how many people manage to stay awake normally though? People with a lazy boy.
I think that'd be amazing though. The lazy boy recliner.
Started thinking about other things, like, no, you have to be doing this for the person. You can't think about shopping or what you're going to eat, which is usually what I'm thinking about.
I think they should serve food and drink.
Yeah.
Could you imagine the sister coming down the row and being like, peanuts, anyone?
You can pay for them as well, you know? Raking some money. We know they're struggling with it.
We've got to pay for this temple. Okay, but here's the interesting thing that I never knew. Sorry, who's this? Donal. Yes, if the church puts lazy boy recliners in the temple, I may have to re-up. Well done, Donal.
10% though of everything. You don't want to re-up.
Yeah, you're paying for that recliner.
You just buy one yourself. You get 10% increase.
It'd be cheaper, wouldn't it, in the long run?
It would.
Got to have somewhere to put it though. But members will have to clean the temple. Think about how that will be a shock to those in the Birmingham Temple district. And that's what they do. Like, apparently it's not even a surprise in the rest of the world, because where they have the smaller temples, that's what they do. It goes on a stake by stake rota, and stakes come in at night and clean the temple. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, imagine it's hard enough when people say you need to go and clean the chapel. You're like, why did they sack the cleaners? Which is a whole other argument.
Oh yeah, okay. But they'll probably have you cleaning the council, the office buildings as well.
Yeah, yeah, just get everyone. Yeah, could you imagine though? Like, oh, tonight you need to go and clean the temple. Okay, I feel particularly sinful tonight. I can't. You know, are you worthy to enter to do the cleaning? No, no. I've had a Coke.
Oh, yeah, I had an experience actually with when we were, because we were in Scotland. I moved to Scotland. My husband's Scottish, and when we were going through the temple for the first time, we bought a cat just before we got married, and it was like a rescue cat, and I don't know if you saw the cat climbing around that was behind me at one point, but it's a cream cat. Okay, it's a cream cat with like really espresso dark chocolate ears and tail. And he called up the vet, my husband, who sat here, and told when they asked the color of the cat, he said it was black and white. The cat is black and white. The cat is a seal point Burman. That's what the cat is. And then we had to go for an interview with the stake president to go through for our endowments or for our sealing. I can't remember, but we'd had this huge argument because I'd moved up before we got married to move into the house that he bought to kind of get a job in the area. But we'd had this huge argument about cat for some reason, and the stake president was furious with us, like absolutely furious. Like, and he was like, and if you ever have an argument like that before on the way to the temple, don't you ever go. You turn around and you go home. You do not enter the temple. Having had that argument. So it made it funny, like, oh, we've got to clean the chapel tonight. Well, we had an argument, and the stake president said, can't go to the temple. Would be a good excuse. You had an argument about cats, so
can't come in. I had someone come to me as bishop. He was engaged to be married, and him and his bride to be had an argument on a Sunday over can you use a vending machine on a Sunday? And I'm like, if that's what you're arguing over now, it's not gonna happen. And they didn't get married in the end, but I was just like, it's not. Once you're married, if that's what the arguments are about, it's not gonna last. Like,
I don't know. We had lots of arguments when we first got together because I think it's such an extreme thing. We had such a short relationship, and then I moved there, and then I think it's just very intense. You get married, and you're suddenly living with a stranger, and I don't know. I found it really difficult anyway. We definitely argued a lot when we were first married, and then mellowed out as we grew older. Well, we're on the same page. One of us is obviously just conforming to the other one.
But it's kind of like you go from 0 to 100 overnight in the church when you do get married, because you've been told for so long about avoiding, and then all of a sudden, within like an hour, it's like, okay, off you go.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, what do I do?
Replenish the earth. Off you go.
Yeah. Off you guys go. You know what to do. And you're like, no, we don't. or no, we don't. You know. And you're just so unprepared for what's to come. But I'm glad that it got better.
Yeah.
Kevin, well done. You're keeping up a good act. Good man. Right.
Or we just had a lot of children really quickly, and then we've just got other distractions. That doesn't matter anymore.
Oh my gosh. That's one way to distract yourself. I can think of other ways.
There was more sensible ways.
Yeah. Snakes.
Well, yeah, we stopped having children, we started having animals, you see.
Yeah, there you go. Right. Thank you, Joe. Thank you for everyone who's been with us this evening. We have covered a plethora of issues. If you do feel that you can support the show, please use the link in the description below to send a tip. If you want to hear more from Joe, again, there's a few links in the description below where you can find Joe on TikTok And if you want to take a look at the quizzes for the Mormon Score and the Mormon Mythbusters, head over to mormonpd.org and you will find everything PD there. But for now, thank you very much and good night. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.